And then the back would be a lighter color. Now that comes, we believe, from the Arapawa or the San Clemente goats, but it's a very common color pattern. However, sometimes it's broken up with a ton of different colors. Sometimes it's got white speckled all in there. And if you looked really carefully at it, you'd see that buckskin pattern. But many people just look and say, wow, I've got to go to many colors. Well, you do. But white is a really interesting color pattern among goats. And white will cover anything. So you may have, I had a doe who was all white, but her parents, one of her mothers, her mother was black and her father was red. And what came out of that was a gray and white agouti, a roan color. I had another doe who was, Mithril's father was sun-gow coloration, brown and white, and her mother was black with a little bit of frosting. And Mithril, no, who was Mithril? Yeah. And what came out of Mithril, in Mithril, was white with a little bit of red flecking. So she probably was genetically a gold, but with white covering everything. So when you look at buckskin, you want to look for that dark in front and light behind. And then if there's white mixed in, it's just white mixed in. Sometimes you'll have what I call a tricolor buckskin, where they might have brown on the legs and gray on the head and tan on the back leg, but it's on the back end, but it's still a buckskin. All right. We have roaning, which can sometimes be called agouti, and that is flecking of different colors amongst a solid color. I have a doe right now who is primarily white, but as she gets older, she gets more and more red on her neck, red on her shoulder blades. She may eventually wind up being a red and white buckskin, but right now she just looks like a red and white roan. I have another buck that I sold this year. He was primarily black, but his name was Ombre because the further down you went on his body, the lighter gray he became. And he had gray roaning all through the top coat and then almost white legs. So roaning is another color pattern that's sometimes referred to as agouti, although agouti is generally white hair flecked over a black coat, so it looks like a blue goat. Or it might be a white flecks out of brown, so it looks like a caramel color. Those are both old-fashioned pygmy colors, and we still see them. The registries don't love that color pattern, but the registries technically say all color patterns are acceptable. The Nigerian Dwarf Goat Association does prefer to not have that color pattern, but there are plenty of champions from the NDGA that do have that color pattern. We have black, and people go, oh my goodness, I don't want a black doe. Everything's going to be black. Black is recessive in goats. If you have a black mother and a bunch of black babies, that's because daddy was black too. Now, he may not have been all black. He may have been chamoisé with some black lines, but he was carrying black. There are people who say they can predict what color pattern is going to be in a baby. I don't believe that. You can have a pretty good scientific certainty, but there are going to be throwbacks. And it's really, really interesting to look at where some of these color patterns came from. And maybe if I get around to doing my goat history section, I'll be able to show you that. I know that Cowrie or Kenya was the first one to actually show a buckskin pattern. But not Cowrie, it was Kenya, who was Cowrie's father. We can really trace the color patterns and where they come in and who showed them up. There is another color pattern which is called Cou Clair or Cou Noir. It's also called the peacock coloration. And that has two different sources. one of which is dubious, one of which is not. It is basically the reverse of a buckskin color. In Coon Blanc, the neck is white, and the back is colored. In Coon Noir, the neck is black, and the back end is a different color. Enchanted Hill, which is Ed Kinzer's farm down in Virginia, he brought in a buck who presented with a Coup Clair color pattern, with the peacock color pattern. And that became a dominant color pattern in his herd. There's another herd that got that color pattern, and they say they got it from Enchanted Hill. Ed says he never sold any animals to that. So we don't know where that came from. It is a fairly preferred color pattern in the Alpine goat. And again, the Nigerian was bred to Alpines at some point in time. However, we did not see that color pattern until in Nigerians, except from the Enchanted Hill line, until about 10 years ago. It kind of popped out of nowhere. So a lot of people are now breeding for that color pattern. I won't buy anything with that color pattern as much as I think it's beautiful, because I'm not convinced that it's a true Nigerian color pattern unless it comes from Ed Kinzer. Now, that being said, I would be glad to buy from Ed, except he's really downsized and barely has any Nigerians left. He's primarily breeding alpacas. We also have another fairly rare color pattern called a Schwartzel. And a Schwartzel is white on the top with a black head and black legs. I had a doe named Harlequin that was that color pattern. Many people don't understand that that is a breedable color pattern, but it is. I had a doe with red legs. Her name was Freya. I had Harley, who had black legs. So those are your basic color patterns. There's lots of solids, and there's lots of variations on all of that. The chamoisé color can be anything from a lavender chamoisé, like I had a doe whose name was Touch of Frost. And Frost she was a gray chamoisé that almost looked purple. And then we can have the other mahogany chamoisé that looks like Oberhasli's. We also have the Sungau, which is sometimes kind of called Swiss coloration. And it is similar to a Toggenburg coloration. It's a solid color, usually black or brown on the top, and then a white face and white legs and tail. And I found that color came to me through the Gaymore line, and it is associated in my herd with really great milking. But that's my genetic line. I'm not sure about everybody else's. We also have a color pattern of Repartida, which is more of a natural goat coloration.